Free agency frenzy is going on, and with that being said, I could make 7, 8 single videos regarding each and every transaction that the Lions make. However, that would be insane, and I don't have time for that. So we're going to knock it all out of the park here today. Everything up to date that has happened as of March 12th. A lot has already transpired, really beginning with the release of Tracy Walker, which we talked about earlier in the last episode. However, some of the biggest moves that have been made, first and foremost, the Lions re-signing Graham Glasgow. It's a 3-year deal, and we needed help. We need help. We got to contain that O-line, keep creating what is one of the best O-lines in the NFL. We saw a lot out of Graham Glasgow this last season where he was a pretty pivotal pickup right before the season began, strictly because, man, listen, the O-line takes a hit, takes some damage, and you need a guy to fill in at the guard or the tackle position. Graham Glasgow or at the center position. Graham Glasgow is that guy. He filled in, and where he struggled at center, he really picked up at the guard position and filled in a key role after Big V went down. So with that being said, Graham Glasgow coming back, that is huge. However, at the same time, the Lions losing Jonah Jackson to a collegiate soccer team. Sorry, the Rams. Their uniforms, just every time. Looks like Internet Explorer honestly made a collegiate soccer team. They're like, that's ours. Those are our uniforms. They're terrible. And I will not stop saying that. Be better. Yes, Jonah Jackson gets to go, but hey, we'll just call for what it is. You get better weather. Then again, Michigan's winter this year has been pretty Los Angeles-like. Jonah Jackson going, it's a $51 million deal where he gets to go to LA, gets to be back with his boy Matt Stafford, have fun, sayonara. Graham Glasgow sticking around. Another area that the Lions addressed and that I have been just calling for, that you have probably been calling for as well, is the cornerback room. The Lions making 2 moves here. Now, where I wanted to potentially spend more money on a bigger guy, bigger name, Lions, Brad Holmes went out to Tampa Bay and snagged cornerback Carlton Davis. Now, it is very interesting with Carlton Davis. Pretty sure he was the dude who got torched by Craig Reynolds in the Block of the Year earlier this season, which is kind of hilarious, him coming in here. But Carlton Davis, everything I've seen, everything I've really read about him and listening to Buccaneer fans, even Jamar Chase, I'm pretty sure, have equated him to being one of the best corners and being a guy. Now, granted, Lions MO in these last couple of years is we find guys struggling with injuries, but show the potential, show that they're a guy, they could be a guy, but the injuries are kind of holding them back. It's Carlton Davis here. Now, I like the snag. I like the pickup. You don't have to spend top dollar for what is potentially a top tier player, but you do run that risk. You run that gamble. But picking up Carlton Davis, I think, is a solid move for Detroit. He's going to fit into Aaron Glenn's scheme real well. Davis is a guy in man-to-man coverage, a solid snag here in Detroit. Now, I know there's going to be people out there who look at it and they're like, oh my God, we had to give up draft capital for a 3rd-round pick, a guy who is injured. Yeah, well, okay. Just for those people who sit there and they're knocking the decision, Brad Holmes got you to an NFC championship game with the pieces that he has picked up. So just stop, for God's sake. It's always interesting when we all like to play GM, myself included, and I guess in the end, when you don't get the pieces that you want, or you get certain pieces that you're like, really? Let's just remember, Brad Holmes has done a heck of a job here in Detroit. So calm down. Everybody just calm down for 1 minute. Carlton Davis, I think a huge pickup here for Aaron Glenn for the scheme, putting him opposite of Cam Sutton. But it doesn't end there. We continue to address the cornerback room with Amik Robertson out of Vegas. He was drafted in 2020 in the 4th round by the Raiders. And where I see the benefits of it is really bringing him in here, because you could see he's had some flashes where you're like, okay, this guy could be great. He's also had some moments where you're like, what are you doing? But I think with the right leadership, with the right coaching, and with the right squad in the backfield or in the secondary, you're going to see potentially really a guy who can play the slot and play it well. I think Amik Robertson is going to be an interesting one. It's not, to me, as flashy as the Davis pickup, but hey, it's help, and it's addressing an area in which we need help. Dear God, do we need help? Other news is John Cominsky taking a pay cut in order to make more room on the salary cap side of things. Cominsky wants to stay here in Detroit, and quite frankly, I don't know if most of our squad, how do I say this? John Cominsky defines the gritty mentality that is the Detroit Lions like none other. There is just something about the guy who is willing to do the dirty work constantly up front on the line, doesn't get a lot of the credit that I think he deserves on this defensive line. And for that reason, him saying, I want a Super Bowl in Detroit, I want to stay here, I'm willing to take the pay cut. It's just who he is. It's who he is at his core. And he belongs here in Detroit. And I don't want him gone. I love Cominsky, and I love that he's sticking around. So thank you, sir, for taking that pay cut, being willing to stay in Detroit. The last real move that the Lions made was picking up Marcus Davenport on a 1-year deal. Davenport, like many other of the guys that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have brought in, has suffered some injuries. But don't let that just sort of be your one and only thought regarding him. Guy can ball out. He spent, I think, 5 seasons. He was in New Orleans with Dan Campbell. It was either 4 or 5 seasons with Dan Campbell in New Orleans. So they know him. They know him well. And quite frankly, the dude's a beast. He shows a lot of promise when he is healthy. He is good. The problem is the healthy factor. He's great at pass rush. He could set the edge. Like, there's a lot to him where you're like, man, you could be an all-around baller if you could just stay healthy. He was with Minnesota, but he didn't play many games due to an ankle. It was an ankle injury, I think. High ankle sprain, maybe. And because of that, we didn't get to see a lot of him, hear a lot of him. However, if the dude could stay healthy, man, could be huge. But said the same about Emmanuel Mosley last year, and that was sad. All in all, it's a depth move. It's adding depth to the edge game. You know, we also picked up Betts. It'll be interesting to see what we address in the draft. But all in all, I think Brad Holmes, I heard a lot of people say it, oh, well, we don't know what Holmes' MO is. For the last 2 years during free agency, this is what he has done. It doesn't mean he's strictly that type of guy. We might go out and spend top dollar somewhere. Well, I think it's safe to say we have found Brad Holmes being this way constantly, consistently, saying we're going to find guys who maybe have suffered injuries or have shown flashes of greatness, but they're struggling. And if we can coach them right, we can make them into top tier, high caliber players. They can be somebody in Detroit. And I do love that. I love that it's this place of second chances, of redemptions, where it used to be a place in which you went to watch your career die. I'm sorry. Flat out, that's what it was. It was a place in which you went and said, how much money can I make before I call it quits? Well, now it's this place of second chances, of opportunity, the land of opportunity, right? And seeing these guys come here and finding a way again, it's truly a ton of fun, and a team that made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. There are some areas that we need to address if we want to see a Super Bowl, and I would be okay with spending top dollar, but I understand that this is Brad Holmes' MO, and I ain't going to challenge it. Not going to question it. I'm going to move forward, blindly trusting him in this. And you might say, why would you do that? NFC North title, first playoff win against Matt Stafford and the Rams, went to the NFC Championship game. I'm pretty happy. Also, let's finish out by understanding in the last video when I talked about Tangled being the best Disney movie ever, I failed to really admit or to address the fact that I don't consider it a part of the old school movies, so that's on me. Hey, that's on me. The best Disney movie of all time is The Lion King, period. It has to be. It has to be. Don't get me wrong, there is room for Aladdin to come into the picture to discuss about that street rat. There's room to talk about all of the Disney movies that have been made up until about 2010, really to 2008 probably. After Tangled, it's all trash. It's all trash. Garbage. And I don't want to talk about it because Disney, you done blew it. You blew it. Whole other tirade for me at another time. But The Lion King is number one. But then when I look at the new school, like the newer movies, that's where I'm like, oh man, I find myself being like, Tangled is phenomenal. But hey, what am I getting on about? Who knows? Not me. It is so hot in this room because, again, it's Los Angeles. Jonah Jackson, you done messed up, kid. And then again, you got paid handsomely. You get to live on the ocean. But it's the Pacific, so who cares? It's not even the Atlantic.